you never know what the ripple effect of that will be. Like from Khaleesi joining Rock Nation, how that might just not spin off. I mean, people probably don't know that Shaquille O'Neal owns most of Northampton Town Football Club. No one really knows that. He just got involved in that. You know, LeBron owns 5 or 10% of Liverpool Football Club. That, you know, football is, as you know, on the top table, and as a result, it brings in people from all different manners of life that can bring both PR, advertising, and finances. And so I think it's great to have as many stars. And again, if that's our end goal, to promote more people to go beyond our shores of rugby, then don't have your communications officer telling you what to say before you interview and diluting the amount of time players can spend in front of camera talking about things or being their authentic self. Get those personalities out there and stop censoring all of that.
Ben, thank you for chatting to me. Again, it is weird interviewing people that I've watched and their careers and someone that's won gold at the Olympics. It's really a thing. So no, I appreciate you chatting to me. Let's talk about Fiji and the gold medal. And I know you're probably sick of talking about it. It's obviously old news for you. It's not for me because I haven't spoken to you about it before, but we'll just touch on that. I mean, how big a deal is that you've got that? Are you kind of sick of talking about it, or is it still a kind of thing for you? And when people like myself chat to you about it and want to talk to you about it, like how proud are you of that, and how much, you know, are you taking that into your life after the Olympics?
Yeah, I shouldn't. I get, you know, I said to you off camera, like I'm a bit bored of talking about it, and I am, as much as like I might end up being a one-trick pony, you know, and that this might be my highlight, and
it's
everything
not a
else.
bad one-trick pony, is
no,
it?
but it's everything could be downhill after that, and you kind of always have that in the back. What it's done is, it changed my life. You know, just that one game and a gold or a silver. Silver, I wouldn't be sitting down here with you, but the gold did change everything. It opened doors everywhere. It also adds, like, if I've got things to say about high performance or culture, I'm saying it from a little bit of experience that I've won world titles and Olympic medals, or a Olympic medal, and so that gives you a bit more credibility. And so you use that for the good. In Fiji, the legacy is that the people, you know, feel that there's less of a glass ceiling now for Fijians around the world in different things they do. Boosted the economy. You know, when everyone talks about how a gold medal equals X amount of money to the GDP, that we actually could see that with tourism, particularly from countries like the US and China that had suddenly saw Fiji playing in the Olympics, just then went, roll, Google Fiji. Oh, that looks like a nice place. Oh, it's only one flight away.
A nice place. It's like paradise.
Yeah, and it's amazing, and I miss it, you know, probably almost every day, especially when I talk about it. I miss the people and I miss the lifestyle in Fiji a lot, but it's part of my past now.
Yeah, I mean, I had a great relationship with a lot of the Pacific Island players, the Tuolagis at Leicester, the late Seru Rambini as well, and they're just phenomenal athletes. I mean, what is it about them? Is it the history, the heritage? I mean,
I think you throw a lot of things into the mix. Sad when you mentioned people like Seru. He was such a lovely guy, and that's always the same when you have conversations about islanders that we have in common, whether it's, you know, Seru and Nomani or the Tuolangis, all those guys. It's a combination of things. National sport, number one. So the best athletes will go into rugby. And so that's already given you a good set of genetics to play around with. And then it's one-touch rugby. They play in the villages, and it's chaotic and it's messy, but that gives them that decision-making and that game understanding. And then the small skills, because it's one-touch and offloading and it's a plastic bottle, all those small things. On top of the fact that everybody comes from kind of the same background, you know, there's talk about it as a throwaway comment, but the posh guy in our team was our captain, Osser Kalinsau, and he still had to take it in turns to go to school in the mornings because his dad could only afford the bus fare for 2 out of the 3 siblings. So, and he was our posh kid. So everybody's from the same economic background, which makes it a lot easier for me as a coach because they've all got similar things, similar tells as far as what really their whys are. And they're very resilient. It's a third world country. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow. So you live in the moment and that transcends rugby. And that's why they throw the offloads. They don't think about what the consequences of the offload. They're just in the moment, and it feels right, and everybody reacts like that. Then you suddenly start to have a really good game. And I just had to kind of find the clues in culture, get them to trust me to trust them. And then also, like, you know, the lesson that I learned that every coach should know is the best players know more than you. And you've got to react to that and understand that, and know that there's times where you sit back and let them do their things and you give them the tools. But yeah, Fiji was, you know, some of the most talented players, some of the most resilient and robust. And the world of rugby is very lucky to have Pacific Islanders playing the game.
No, they absolutely are. And you touched on it earlier, and it's not a side note, it's one thing that without researching them you never know, or without being on the inside, is around the politics that come with this Fiji team. And there is this political thing that's still quite unnerving about them being able to go to the next level in 15s as well. Yeah,
there is, you know, and you take someone like Semi, you know, he worked down the copper mines, you know, for a while as well. So, you know, he's come through the system, and he's had it tough, and he deserves every dollar that he gets. Because it's the jewel of Fiji, really, you know, people care about rugby, and it's the people's team. That therefore there's a spotlight on it, and if you get involved in it and you're part of it, you know, if that means that head of state is also head of the Fijian Rugby Union. So Francis Keane was chairman, but his brother-in-law is Frank Bainimarama, who's the current prime minister, who was, when I joined, he was the military dictator, and it was his second coup that he had taken over government. He becomes leader of the Fijian Rugby Union. Now, whether he's the best person in the world to do that, it still shouldn't happen. You can't have head of state and head of your rugby union. It just means that there's always an opportunity that things are going to go or going to be accused of going in the wrong direction. And then, you know, the fact that Francis was his brother-in-law and was chairman, he actually knew a lot about rugby. You know, he had a decent rugby brain, but he had a pretty dark background, very dark background. His ego was front and center when you chat to him. And it was a pretty intimidating place for a lot of the people that worked in the Fijian Rugby Union, and players wouldn't get selected. You know, if they would have if one of them had a cousin or something that's in the opposition political party, it's very hard for that guy to get into the team. So we need to separate that. Now, that's not just, you know, it was more subtle in the RFU. It definitely existed. It was just more subtle. You know, they were just a bit clever at hiding what their own political end games were. Not any worse or any better. Just in Fiji, it was, I knew what you had to deal with, because you knew exactly it was around ego and power, and you manage those situations. But the RFU, it was very different, and it was convoluted and difficult. So it does exist everywhere. And I think World Rugby now, you know, they're in the November tournament, which is a great start. They've got an amazing management group around them that I hope are being, you know, treasured and looked after. And there are some really good coaches in the system that are coming through Fiji, not just locals, but also guys that went overseas, played in different tournaments, different competitions. You know, I was chatting to Nomani Nandalo a couple of weeks ago. You know, he's played in every top league around the world. You know, I mean, you want to be mining him for information, and he wants to give that back to the islands as well. So in a roundabout way, hopefully now the time is right for the islands to get front and centre.
There was a lot of talk, and there has been a lot of talk around the All Blacks, and you look at the makeup of their players that come from the Pacific Islands and some of their best players, Jonah Lomu being one of them. And I don't know what it was like when you were in Fiji, or even in your standing in the game now, looking at developing players, whether that is a good thing that these players from the Pacific Islands get the opportunity to play for the All Blacks, or get the opportunity to come and play in France or Radradra at Bristol, to name one, and make that amount of money. Is that seen as a good thing still, or is there still a point where the money needs to be put back into the system? World Rugby needs to look after Fiji and give them the opportunities that the other Tier 1 nations get.
There's definitely, again, a number of things that contribute to why guys from Pacific Island ancestry go on to play for certainly the two closest, Australia and New Zealand, and then Japan, and then Europe and beyond. Some of it is purely economic, that families will migrate, and some of it is opportunity. So the Dean's Cup is like, it used to be like the old Daily Mail Schools Cup. So it's a national 15s competition in Fiji, finals in Suva, from about under 13s upwards. They've got, whether it's a headmaster from a big New Zealand school going, giving you 100 grand in scholarship, how you want to cut it up. But when you see where the boys come from, and so like, I don't know, Sevu Reece or someone like that, and if he gets a scholarship and he gets airlifted away from Fiji to New Zealand, gets a great education, gets opportunity then to play in the ITM and then Super Rugby and then potentially for the All Blacks, no one's gonna say in Fiji that he shouldn't be doing that. And in fact, often in Fiji, they will see that you play Test match rugby for Fiji, you're here. If you're Fijian and then plays for the All Blacks or Australia, then you're almost on a higher level. And Australia they've targeted Fijians more recently because of their player pool, and there's lots of boys that played age group in Fiji that are now making their way into the Australian Test match team. I don't think that you could never ever criticise a player for doing that. How do you stop that? Well, the closest league to play any sort of money professionally rugby is the ITM Cup. If a franchise exists on the islands, that's whether it's part of the new Super Rugby franchise, maybe it's into the MLR, whatever, to have a club that people can then stay on the island and be paid for and play for, that's going to help. And it's also going to build up, academies on the islands and everything else. So it's a combination of all of those things, really.
From your perspective, who is involved in 15s, you've done a lot of stuff with the Scotland Rugby Union, we've spoken about Fiji and consult for many of the teams, World Rugby as well. What is the lay of the land like, both from a financial standing, participation, TV rights? It's a bit of a mismatch at the minute, it seems.
It is. There's lots of moving parts that we could get better at, especially when, I see what happens in US in professional sport. It is different because, NFL or NBA or Major League Baseball, it's one league that everybody aspires to go into. So if you're the best basketball player in France, you're not going to stay in France, you're going to come across and play in the NBA. And so there's some great leagues in France, and there's great ones in Spain and Greece for basketball, but you drive towards that one league. Now in rugby, that's not where we are yet. I think we're getting closer with the migration of the South African teams across. So it's only time before all of those various connotations in Europe become one, and we get tiers below that. And I love the NBA G League, which is the subsidiary league that I think works so well for them, and we could be doing something similar around that. I think also we know that it's not sustainable to have top end league below the top. Championship should not be a professional league. Semi-pro, and that should be the aspirations. Have an expansion-based league so that you're not shutting the door to an aspiring team like Exeter were in the past and others before it. But you're also making sure that those teams can build their franchises and can build their product. It's the same for rugby. I think as a sport, we're a bit rudderless in as far as working out what we need to do. It's the same as we have lots of layers of laws. Now that's that's a choice. You can have a really simple game like rugby league or sevens, where it's easier to understand quicker. Now people might like nuanced games a bit more, and you might grow up a bit older and actually think I like sitting down and watching 15-a-side rugby, and it does have a lot more laws. But then those laws need to be adhered to properly. So you can't have these grey areas where a referee can just decide that you're allowed to come off your feet, or you're allowed to latch, or you're allowed to have a caterpillar. That then creates, as a result of that greyness, it creates these terrible amount of box kicking that just kills me, and that's why I turn over and watch non-league football. Because the ripple is because of all these other things. It's not because of that one box kick or the coaches that decided that's our way. It's because of all the other things that have unfolded around it.
Global superstars, you kind of touched on it there around the money in the game. Yeah. We spoke about Semi Radradra at Bristol, Cheston Colby, lighting up the rugby world over in Toulouse, obviously on the world stage with South Africa. Maro Itoje, there's talk of him wanting £1 million to go and play in Paris for a year. Sia Khaleesi's now with Rock Nation, which is Jay-Z or Eminem or all of them. How important is it to have these kind of global superstars to grow the game?
Yeah, loads of different reasons why. For a lot that you gave, it will drive just more interest, which you never know what the ripple effect of that will be. Like from Khaleesi joining Rock Nation, how that might just not spin off. I mean, people probably don't know that Shaquille O'Neal owns most of Northampton Town Football Club. No one really knows that. he just got involved in that. You know, LeBron owns 5 or 10% of Liverpool Football Club. That, you know, football is, as you know, on the top table, and as a result, it brings in people from all different manners of life that can bring both PR, advertising, and finances. And so I think it's great to have as many stars. And again, if that's our end goal, to promote more people to go beyond our shores of rugby, then don't have your communications officer telling you what to say before you interview and diluting the amount of time players can spend in front of camera talking about things or being their authentic self. Get those personalities out there and stop censoring all of that. And again, I hate to keep mentioning American sport, but that doesn't happen in the NBA or the NFL. Players say what they want and they promote both themselves and the club and the sport. And it means that you're going to get a player that's not going to say something that you like all the time, but who cares? It's about just making ourselves more open. So I think we need to promote these guys. I think it's awesome to see what Sia's doing at the moment. You know, it would be great if another Jonah Lomu in whatever way can get to that level of superstar that he became. Whether the game allows as much opportunity as it used to, I don't know, to have that superstar, if you know what I mean, from a playing point of view, whether someone can do their thing like a Cheslin all the time. But I hope that happens.
Yeah, me too. Ben Ryan, thank you very much for talking to me for RugbyPass. I
No
really enjoyed that. Could have spoke to you all day.
Pleasure.
So maybe we can do it another time.
Thanks, Jim.